I'm making another album, and it's been a few days since I recorded anything, and that's not because I didn't want to or lost the vibe. It's because the weather here has been atrocious, and I do like recording these walking around in the countryside because I'm kind of killing two birds with one stone, but unfortunately that hasn't been possible. And I tried actually this morning. I went for a walk and I was thinking I was going to do another one, but the wind is still super strong. And I thought, oh, I'll tell you what I'll do instead is walk around my studio, my studio. So at the moment, I'm walking around in circles recording this. So since we last spoke, I've been making music every day, and I can't exactly remember how I left the last one, but it was about either singing or not singing. And I've definitely, whether I made the decision then or I have made the decision now, that's the only important thing, is that I am going to kill this particular dragon. I'm going to slay this dragon, because one of the things that I've realized about making music is it makes us almost more than we make it. I mean, of course, we make it, but in the making of it, that makes us. And you can use, the creation of anything, you can use almost anything that you do as a tool, if you like, to develop yourself in some way, or to figure out something, or to improve somewhere. And I found that this approach, looking at it almost backwards, where the result is in service of the process, so the process of improvement, or the process of getting over something, or the process of, something like that, then what that ends up doing is freeing you. It really frees you up to grow, to do the thing that you want to do. So it strikes me that for various different reasons, this whole singing issue that has become a monkey on my back, a dragon in a cave, it's like, enough. Let's just kill it. Let's just destroy it now, and then I can move forward. And who knows what will happen after that? I might decide I don't want to sing, and all I needed to do was just do it for a project, or I might decide that I want to continue. And that, who knows what will happen. But at this point, one of the purposes of this album is for me to slay my singing dragon. And it was quite funny, actually. I got a text from Lawrence, the guy who's got the DAT. and he said, oh, I'll have to dig out the DAT. And I wrote back to him and I was like, sorry, mate, beat you to it. So yeah. But, just to be clear, it's not Lawrence's fault that I had. I mean, at the end of the day, it was just a joke between friends, right? And so it's not, in no way was it his. I'm not blaming him for this monkey on my back. It was more, it's very much an internal thing where I just took it too serious. I took the ridiculousness of the thing too seriously, and that was my problem. I think it's more like was my problem. I was too attached to the idea of something that I wasn't. I hadn't done the work to be that thing that I thought I was. One song with like a tiny little lyric and then literally recording it. What did I expect? I mean, really. So anyway, here's what I'm doing now. It's been interesting, actually. When I'm coaching people, do recommend that they focus on a setup for an amount of time. So I don't know, I was talking to a guy who makes music on modular, and he was talking about just using a small portion of his gear, just one kind of patch, one collection of modules, and I, for a very, very long time, just focused on like piano and delay. Before that, I focused on 3 Moogs and piano and delay and just a little kind of synth sound. And because, at this point, I'm doing something slightly different to that. And that's purely because I'm in what I'm calling the preparation phase of the album making process, because there are a lot of decisions that it would be really helpful to make before I really go at it hard. I am working on it now, but it's like I'm not like, it's much more open, relaxed. I mean, you don't have to do this stage of the process, but because it's December, that's one thing. And also because I kind of do want to get ahead, if you like. I want to get prepared. And also, but crucially, I want to make some decisions about, so for instance, am I going to sing or am I not going to sing? So I want to make some decisions about what I'm actually, the direction I'm going in, so that when I start generating ideas more purposefully in January, I kind of know what I'm doing. And so what that requires, because there's a number of different options. It could be just a piano and voice thing. What about this whole auto-tune thing I've been playing around with? I could just do instrumental stuff. I could do sort of, I've got this idea because I like there's a particular kind of electronic sort of, I don't know what you call it really, techno-y, housey sound that never ever has any vocals on it. Like you're not allowed. And I'd really like to play around with that, for instance. So there's that, and there's all these different things that I could do. And what I've been doing, I mean, even before I decided to actually do the album, was this was really when I started thinking about singing. I decided to do 100 splurges, and at the moment I'm on splurge 70 of those 100 splurges. And in the past 2 weeks I've decided to focus on this album. So those 100 splurges are kind of part of the deciding process. But now there's an actual project, because I was sort of flitting about a bit, and before I decided on making this album and sharing it and and being public about it, something with a deadline, it was like there wasn't really an end point, there wasn't a purpose. So it was very easy for me to put the splurges I was doing, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll do it tomorrow, right? Whereas now, because I've got this, right, I'm actually going to start proper. I think it's January, the second week of January, or the third week of January or something. And I'm going to start proper then. I'm preparing now. I'm making some decisions. And so that now means that I'm a little bit more purposeful. Having said that, in terms of what I'm using, the instruments I'm using, it has been a little bit, since I last spoke to you, it's been a little bit like I've been doing a bit of this and a bit of that, and I'm getting a bit frustrated with it. It's like I have to make a decision before I start splurging. So, there's been definitely some stuff that's come out of it. So one of the things that I did immediately after the last episode was I recorded a vocal splurge. So I did it with the voice and piano. And what I'm probably going to do, I think, is, and this is another part of me slaying my dragon in public, what I'm probably going to do, possibly on the next episode or a later episode, because I don't want it to become a thing that stops me making any episodes at all, right? But what I'm possibly going to do is actually share on this podcast that raw splurge with the vocal and kind of explain what my process is. Because the other thing that I've noticed is that I'm not being... so for instance, one of the things I also recommend people do after they splurge is that they do what I call a WPO, which is a wins, problems and opportunities. So after you've done a session of any kind, if you have time, at the end of the day, if you can't do it, fine. It's better to make music and not do it than but if you can, you go, okay, so what were the wins from that session? And this is really focused on the process. Then what were the problems in that session? Again, focused on the process, not, I really hated what I did, but what were the problems of the session? And opportunities, well, what could I do differently next time? And over time, you use that data gathering, that information gathering from actually making music to upgrade either your setup or how you're doing it or what you're doing, right? And then when I come to listen back to the splurges, which I do at least 3 days, it's usually more like a week later, then what I do and decide what to bookmark for later and what not to bookmark. What I also want to start doing, because I've not been doing this, is doing a WPO then as well, wins, problems, opportunities. But this time, focused on the result. So the WPO immediately after the session is focused on the actual process, like the doing of it, not the result. And then when I listen back to because that's when it's fresh in your mind and you remember what you did, right? So it's the ideal time to do that, to do a wins, problems, opportunities. Whereas when you when you listen back to the result 3 or 7 days later, you probably won't remember how you did it. But what you can hear with more of an objective view, because you're sort of listening with distance, that's the ideal time to do wins, problems, opportunities on the result. So that's what I want to be doing, and what I've noticed is I haven't been doing that. so I've just, and that is partly due to the fact that I didn't for a long time, for the first 55, 60 of these 100 splurges that I'm doing, I didn't have a project, so I was kind of a bit all over the place and not really focused. But now I do. I'm like, okay, how am I going to get the most juice out of the extremely limited amount of time I have to make this album? Because I really don't have much time at all, and because I've got 4 kids, we've got building work going on. We homeschool. I've got the business, coaches, training, clients. It's just writing emails, everything I do. The live sessions that I run, the live programs. It's pretty crazy. So I've got, probably not including recording these episodes, I've probably got a maximum of an hour a day if I'm lucky. So how am I actually going to? Because I am going to finish this album, no matter how bad it is, I'm going to get it done by the 9th of April, no matter how bad it is. And so in order to do that, I need to make sure that the time that I am investing in it has the most bang for its buck. Now, that doesn't mean getting all zeroed in on the result, on getting all, freaked out by the result. It's more about how do I create a kind of system where I'm constantly improving. And WPO, so each of those wins, problems, opportunity sessions maybe takes 5 minutes to do. And that is, it's an outsized impact, that 5 minutes, on what ends up happening. And it's not that you have to necessarily, this is the great thing about it, it's not that, what I've found is you don't necessarily have to be reviewing it and trying to remember everything that you wrote. It's just the act of doing it. The majority of the juice, the juice really is in the doing of it. Because what you find is that by intentionally making those, okay, so what were the wins, what were the problems, what could I do differently, that what you end up doing is you kind of automatically upgrade those things without thinking about it. Obviously it would be better if you review, maybe it wouldn't, I don't know. But possibly it would be better if you spent time reviewing and collating and saying, all right, well, this is the most important thing, all that kind of stuff. But to be honest, I don't have time to do that. So I'm going to do at least that. And on that note, what I've also decided to do, and I'll be honest with you, as I'm saying this right now, it's kind of like I'm probably making the final decision right now because I'm about to say it, even though I feel a bit about it. What I'm also going to do as part of this project is I'm going to make my music machine in Trello, which is, the music machine, Trello, by the way, is a project management software that lots of businesses use to do all kinds of things like software development, and it's like a Kanban board. So you've got these cards which you move across and you can create different columns. And it's the software that we use to track what's going through the music machine. If you want the Trello template, which shows you the entire music machine, then there'll be a link in the show notes. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make my music machine, as I'm making this album, I won't do it forever probably, I'm going to make actually I might do, because then if people want to hear the podcast later on, yeah, probably what I'll do is I will make a music machine for this album, and I will make it public, view only. But it's not only view only, you'll also be able to hear the terrible works of sheer awfulness and some good bits that I'm making. And why am I doing this? Well, there's a few reasons, and this is really going back to my initial thought, which is, do you make your music, or does your music make you? What I've noticed is that by making certain decisions, let me back up a bit. I think that a lot of people, possibly most, believe that how you get success is by forcing yourself to do something that you don't want to do, right? So you're coercing yourself to do it, and if you're not doing that, if you're not able to do that, then there's something wrong with you. You're lazy, or you're not disciplined enough, and your school teacher was right, right? Yeah, that for me, I think that's absolute nonsense. Well, maybe not absolute nonsense, but I don't believe that. I think it's more like this: you make decisions, and that sets up a system of incentives, a situation, an environment, which then are the majority of your future actions are based upon the structure of the environment you've created, the incentives you've created. It's like you automatically work within that environment. So what I tend to do now, instead of trying to force myself to do things, if I'm not doing something I want to do, I go, okay, so what is one thing, or not, it doesn't have to be one thing, but how can I create the conditions where I automatically do it? So a really good example is this podcast right now, and choosing to make an album, right? Because then the fact that I am making an album, the album project is the thing that is pushing me forward. So in other words, it's making me do it. Yes, of course, I decided to do it, and recording this podcast is and committing to doing that and saying to everyone, I'm going to do it, and sending emails about it. That is also creating the conditions where not only do I have to record another podcast, I also have to make an album. Yeah. So I'm creating an incentive structure where I don't have to motivate myself. The project is motivating me. Right. I mean, there's lots of things that go into it, being in public, doing it in sense with other people. And this is another example of it, the sharing of my Trello board, the sharing of my music machine as I make the album, while it's in many ways absolutely terrifying. I mean, if I think about some of my kind of they're not colleagues, that's the wrong word. So peers, there you go. Colleagues, we're not lawyers. Anyway, so some of my peers who I've kind of made music with over the years, who are kind of, done really, really well, and they're quite up there. And if I think about some of them, if I put my card, some of them listening to some of the unutterable dross that is in my music machine right now, then I go, oh my God, that's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. But you know what? And the other thing is, I know this flies in the face of a lot of those people who are bemoan, and this might be true of you, and there is some validity to this kind of way of looking at it. There's absolutely some validity to it. This flies in the face of the people who are kind of bemoan the loss of the mystery of making music. Yeah, the kind of ivory tower thing. It's like, well, we don't know how they do it, because what happens is this amazing thing comes out, right? And I get that. I totally get that. I don't think that what I'm doing right now is right for everyone. I wouldn't, for instance, suggest that Aphex Twin do this, right? Or probably I'm just trying to think, any of my clients, unless they had the urge to, right? But the thing is, since I stopped making music in, when was it? 2010, 2011, for 7-8 years-ish, to coach people, my music, one of the things is, I mean, apart from me loving it and me wanting to express something, one of the most important reasons I am making music is to help people, right? And that's just, I'm not saying that must be true of everyone, and if you don't have that, then you're wrong. But for me, it's to help people, to show people, because there's so much crap believed around the creative process. There's so much BS where people sort of think that, you know, these amazing works are created. It's almost like they're created automatically by these amazing individuals. I mean, they are amazing individuals, but they made themselves amazing through the creative process. Their creative process made them amazing. It didn't start out amazing, and a lot of the best pieces don't start out amazing. Some of them do. Some of them just come out, right? But what I wanted, and by the way, I'm not necessarily thinking that my end result in April is going to be amazing, but what it will be is a document. It will, you will be able to hear how it improves, and that's one of the most important things to me. I'm oversharing, if you like literally just sharing the music machine I'm using with all of the terrible splurges, the good splurges, like the music that I'm working on. I will be using it in real time. You'll be able to see it online, actually happening in real time, and hear the different versions. And actually, you'll be able to see if I'm doing my WPS and if I am splurging every day. You like, and what that is doing is not only, it's a win-win as far as I can see, because not only am I showing how something that can end up being quite good can start terribly. I'm also showing, because some of the splurges I've been doing, what I'm noticing is that there are different kinds of splurges I'm doing. Some are more, right, it's almost like I'm live composing. So I'm like, okay, I mean, I don't actually decide this beforehand. Maybe I need to, but anyway, I don't decide this beforehand. But over the last few weeks, some of them I just play and then a piece of music comes out. Okay, and I would call that a bit more similar to what I was doing with my live streams, where I was making a new piece of music every day, like by improvising it. I call it live composing. I prefer that phrase, right? Others, what I'm doing, and this goes into a sort of a unique style conversation, which I won't have now. But the other thing that I am doing is that I'm experimenting with different sort of techniques and ways of doing things, which I know I can't do now. I will talk about this on a future podcast, so I won't give you an example. But in those situations, I have to be okay with it sounding like ear-splittingly bad. I have to be okay with that in order for the experiment to be a useful experiment. I cannot be in the moment of doing it focused on the result, because I don't really care about how good the result is. What I care about is this going to work? And if I was to make it, is this technique, is this way of doing things going to work? And if it could work, how am I going to practice to get there? Because a lot of the things I'm trying, I'm not good enough yet to do it. So there are some in there which are just, I'd call them more experiments than pieces of music. And and sharing all this stuff, it scares the living daylights out of me. But why? Why does it scare the living daylights out of me? What is there to be afraid of? I was having a conversation with someone yesterday about, I don't want to feel, and I totally get this, I feel it too. I don't want to feel embarrassed by it being out of tune. by my singing being out of tune. But what is there to be embarrassed of? Right? In noticing where you can improve, what you are doing is you're taking the first step in improving. Is improving embarrassing? Is the need to improve embarrassing? At the end of the day, what people think, people will think whatever they want to think, and you can't change that, and you don't even know what they'll think. It's like what they think is up to them. Really, what counts is what you are doing helping you improve, move forward? Are you engaged in what you're doing? Are you excited by what you're doing? Not that you have to be engaged and excited all the time, but if you're not, you can look at it and go, okay, so what could I change to, again, create an incentive structure, or what project could I do to encourage me to be excited? That is all that really counts. Because at the end of the day, what happens out there, of course, I'm not saying don't focus on it at all, don't do any promotion, you just don't even think about that. That's not what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, no matter what you do, what will happen out there, it happens. And so you can't make what people think and how well it does and that kind of success the reason that you're making the music. Because if you do, when you do that, it becomes a lot more difficult to make music. This is slightly different if you're absolutely massive, and that's a slightly different situation. But for me, and I'm guessing many of the people listening to this, not all. So for instance, if I was talking to some of my A-list clients, I probably wouldn't be saying exactly the same thing, right? But if you're just starting out, or you're not very well known, or you're aspiring, like really I am now in terms of my music, because it's like I'm starting again, then what you want to make the purpose of your music isn't about what people think. Yeah, what people think, some people think could help, but really what it has to be about is your improvement. And if you are hearing that you are out of tune in the past, then that is the first step to your improvement, and you don't need to be embarrassed about it. And that's why I'm putting my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to be sharing my music machine. So that's it for today. You'll find a link to my music machine. It's view only, but you can listen to whatever you want to listen to. You might need some earplugs or some ear muffs for some of them. So you can listen to what you listen to, and that is, it will be changing all the time. I'm literally using that exact Trello board. It is the Trello board. It's just that you're seeing it view only, and I've got edit privileges. So a link to that is in the show notes. Don't spend all your time listening to my music, though. I'm sure you won't after you hear some of them. Make your own music, and I'll see you very soon.